Fairy tales are the first maps we are given of the world. They are often our earliest encounters with morality, with the stark differences between right and wrong, and with the unsettling truth that not all stories have happy endings. I remember as a child, huddled under blankets with a book, the words on the page painting pictures far more vivid than any illustration. These tales were not just simple amusements, they were formative. They taught us about courage in the face of towering giants and about the dangers of straying from the well-trodden path. They warned us that promises once made carry immense weight and that breaking them can unleash consequences far beyond what we could ever imagine. These stories, passed down through generations, are more than just entertainment. They are cultural artifacts carrying the fears, hopes, and anxieties of the societies that created them. Think of Hansel and Gretel, a story born from the very real and terrifying threat of famine. Or Little Red Riding Hood, a cautionary tale about the dangers that lurk just beyond the safety of the village. The Pied Piper of Hamelin, however, always felt different. It was darker, more mysterious, and more deeply rooted in a specific time and place. It felt less like a fairy tale and more like a ghost story, a haunting melody played on a loop through history. The power of these tales lies in their ability to stay with us long after we have closed the book. They burrow into our subconscious, shaping our understanding of justice and betrayal. The Pied Piper in particular leaves a chilling impression because its central injustice is never resolved. The children are lost, the town is left in perpetual grief, and the Piper himself simply vanishes. This lack of resolution is what makes the story so compelling and so disturbing. It defies the neat conclusions we often expect from folklore, leaving us with a profound sense of unease and a string of unanswered questions that linger into adulthood. As we grow older, we begin to see the layers within these simple narratives. We start to question their origins and wonder about the kernel of truth that might be hidden at their core. The Pied Piper story invites this kind of investigation more than any other. It is not set in a nameless, timeless, once-upon-a-time kingdom, but in a real German town called Hamelin. It is tied to a specific date, a specific street, and a specific documented loss. This connection to reality transforms it from a simple fable into one of history's most enduring and creepy mysteries, a puzzle that historians and folklorists are still trying to piece together centuries later. The story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin is one that almost everyone knows, at least in its broadest strokes. It is a tale of civic failure, a broken promise, and a terrible musical revenge. The classic version begins in the year 1284 in the bustling German town of Hamelin. The town was suffering from a terrible affliction, a plague of rats. The rodents were everywhere, swarming through the streets, infesting the homes and contaminating the food supplies. The citizens were desperate, and the town council was at a complete loss, unable to find any solution to the overwhelming vermin problem that was threatening to destroy their community. Into this scene of chaos and despair steps a strange and mysterious figure. He is dressed in multicolored or pied clothing, and he carries a simple pipe. He presents himself to the town's mayor as a professional rat catcher, a man of unique talents. He makes the council a straightforward offer. For a handsome payment of 1,000 guilders, he will rid Hamelin of every single rat. The desperate town leaders quickly agree to his terms, promising to pay him the full amount as soon as the job is done. They see him as the answer to their prayers, a miraculous solution to an impossible problem. The piper then walks into the town square, raises his pipe to his lips, and begins to play a mesmerizing, enchanting tune. As the music drifts through the streets and alleys, a miraculous thing happens. The rats begin to emerge from every building, every cellar, and every sewer. They pour out in a great squeaking tide drawn irresistibly to the piper's melody. He leads the massive swarm of rodents out of the town, down to the banks of the Weser River. He wades into the water, still playing his pipe, and the entire army of rats follows him in and drowns, cleansing the town of its plague. With the town saved, the piper returns to the town hall to collect his promised fee. But now that the threat is gone, the mayor and the council members have a change of heart. They see the piper not as a savior, but as a strange wanderer. And they scoff at the idea of paying such a large sum for what seemed like a simple tune. They refuse to honor their agreement, offering him a mere fraction of the promised amount. The piper, his face hardening with anger, warns them of the grave consequences of breaking their word. He vows that they will regret their greed, then turns and leaves the town hall in a cold, ominous silence. What elevates the Pied Piper story from mere folklore to a historical enigma is the tangible evidence found within Hamelin itself. This isn't a fairy tale that exists only in the pages of a book. It's a memory etched into the very fabric of the town. The most compelling piece of evidence is a stained glass window that was created for the town's church around the year 1300, just a few decades after the supposed event. Although the original window was destroyed, detailed descriptions of it survive in historical records. These accounts describe the window as depicting a colourful piper leading a group of children dressed in white out of the town. This window is a powerful piece of historical corroboration. It suggests that within a generation of 1284, the townspeople of Hamelin felt it was important to commemorate a tragic event involving the loss of their children and a mysterious piper figure. This was not a story told for entertainment, it was a memorial, a public acknowledgement of a profound and devastating loss. The existence of such an artifact, created so close to the time of the event, makes it very difficult to dismiss the entire narrative as pure fiction. It points to a real traumatic incident that deeply scarred the community's collective memory. Further evidence can be found in the town's official chronicles. An entry in the Hamelin town records from 1384, exactly 100 years after the event, states, "It is 100 years since our children left." This concise and somber statement is not part of a fanciful story, but is written as a plain historical fact. It treats the departure of the children as a known, dated event, a historical marker in the town's timeline. This official record, devoid of any embellishment about rats or magic pipes, grounds the legend in a recorded historical reality, suggesting that at the core of the story, the sudden disappearance of a large number of children actually happened. Perhaps the most curious piece of living evidence is a local law in Hamelin concerning a specific street, the Bungerlosenstrasse, which translates to the street without drums. To this day, it is forbidden to play music or dance on this street. Local tradition holds that this was the last street the children walked down before they disappeared forever behind the piper. This ongoing custom serves as a perpetual memorial, a daily reminder of the town's great tragedy. It is a testament to how deeply the story is ingrained in Hamelin's identity, a sorrowful tradition passed down through more than 7 centuries, keeping the memory of the lost children alive in a uniquely tangible way. One of the most prominent and, grim theories behind the legend of the Pied Piper is that the story is a symbolic representation of a devastating plague. In the Middle Ages, widespread disease was a constant and truly terrifying reality. Epidemics could sweep through a town with breathtaking speed, wiping out huge portions of the population, with children and the elderly being especially vulnerable. A sudden, catastrophic loss of a large number of children to an unseen killer could easily be personified in folklore as a sinister figure who led them away. The piper, in this interpretation, is not a literal person, but a metaphor for death itself. The rats in the story lend strong support to this theory. Rats, specifically the fleas they carry, are the primary vectors for the bubonic plague, the infamous Black Death. While the Great Plague pandemic that devastated Europe occurred in the mid-14th century, smaller, localized epidemics were common long before then. It is entirely plausible that Hamelin was struck by such an outbreak in 1284. The story might have combined 2 separate events, a severe rat infestation followed by a deadly disease that claimed the town's youth. Over time, oral tradition could have woven these 2 tragedies together into a single cohesive narrative. The Danse Macabre, or Dance of Death, was a popular artistic motif in late medieval Europe, often depicting a personified death leading people from all walks of life, from kings to peasants, in a grim dance to their graves. This imagery is strikingly similar to the Pied Piper leading the children away. Some versions of the legend even describe the children dancing as they followed the piper, unable to stop themselves. This could be a folk memory of the physical symptoms of certain diseases, such as the convulsive fits and spasms associated with illnesses like ergotism, a poisoning caused by consuming contaminated rye grain. Therefore, the story becomes an allegory for a public health crisis. The town's promise to the piper could symbolize their failure to take proper sanitary precautions or to heed warnings about an impending sickness. Their refusal to pay represents a kind of collective denial or negligence. The piper's revenge, the loss of the children, is the natural and tragic consequence of a community's inability to protect its most vulnerable members from the ravages of disease. The tale serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of life in an era before modern medicine, when death could arrive suddenly and inexplicably like a mysterious musician with an irresistible tune. Another compelling theory connects the disappearance of the Hamelin children to the historical phenomenon of the Children's Crusades. While the most famous of these movements occurred earlier in the 13th century, the idea of religiously inspired mass movements, often involving young people, was a recurring feature of the era. These crusades were led by charismatic figures who claimed to have received divine visions, promising to peacefully convert Muslims in the Holy Land or to achieve other miraculous feats. They would wander the countryside, gathering followers, many of whom were adolescents and young adults filled with fervent belief. The Pied Piper, with his enchanting music and irresistible charm, fits the archetype of such a charismatic leader perfectly. He could have been a religious zealot or a persuasive recruiter who passed through Hamelin, captivating the town's youth with promises of glory, salvation, or a divinely ordained mission. His pipe might be a metaphor for his powerful rhetoric and persuasive sermons, which drew the young people away from their homes and families. The story's detail of the children being led to a hill or mountain that opened up and swallowed them could be a symbolic representation of them leaving for a long and arduous journey from which they would never return. Historical accounts of these movements are often tragic. The youthful crusaders were ill-prepared for the dangers of such a long journey. They lacked supplies, organization, and protection. Many perished from starvation, disease, or exposure along the way. Others were exploited by unscrupulous merchants who promised them safe passage by sea, but instead sold them into slavery in North Africa. The parents in towns like Hamelin would have been left waiting for children who were never coming back, with no clear understanding of what had happened to them. The story of a magical piper provides a narrative to explain an otherwise incomprehensible loss. This theory neatly explains the total disappearance of the children, without any bodies being found near Hamelin. They didn't die in the town, they simply walked away. The town's guilt, represented by the broken promise, could stem from the parents' and leaders' initial permission for the children to leave, perhaps swayed by the recruiters' religious fervor, only to be consumed by regret when the devastating reality of the mission became clear. The legend, in this context, is a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind faith and the seductive power of charismatic leaders who prey on the idealism and innocence of youth. A third major historical theory proposes that the story of the Pied Piper is an allegorical account of a massive population movement known as the Ostsiedlung, or the German eastward expansion. During the 12th and 13th centuries, there was a significant migration of German-speaking people from the densely populated regions of the West, like Lower Saxony, where Hamelin is located, to the less populated lands of Eastern Europe, such as Pomerania, Brandenburg, and Transylvania. This colonization effort was actively encouraged by Eastern European rulers and landlords who sought skilled German farmers and craftsmen to settle and develop their territories. Recruiters, known as locators, were sent by these nobles to German towns to entice people to emigrate. These men were often flamboyant and highly persuasive, making grand promises of free land, reduced taxes, and a prosperous new life. The Pied Piper, with his colorful clothes and alluring promises, could have been just such a locator. He arrived in Hamelin, a town that may have been suffering from overpopulation and famine, the rats, and made an offer that was too good to refuse, not just to the town leaders, but directly to the younger generation who had the least to lose and the most to gain. The legend states that 130 children left Hamelin. Interestingly, historical records from this period show that surnames from Hamelin and the surrounding area began to appear in parts of Eastern Europe. This suggests that a group of people from this region did, in fact, migrate east. The story of the children being lost might not mean they died, but that they were lost to their hometown forever. Communication over such vast distances was nearly impossible, and for the parents left behind in Hamelin, their children who moved hundreds of miles away were as good as gone. The mountain that swallowed them could be a metaphor for the vast and difficult journey across the German highlands. This theory transforms the story from one of revenge into one of social and economic pressure. The piper is not a villain, but an agent of historical change. The crime of the town wasn't breaking a promise about rat catching, but perhaps the older generation's failure to provide adequate opportunities for their children, effectively forcing them to seek their fortunes elsewhere. The story then becomes a folk memory of a painful but necessary exodus, a major demographic shift that reshaped the map of Europe. The lingering sadness in the tale reflects the sorrow of families torn apart by migration, a universal theme that still resonates today. Centuries after the children of Hamelin walked away, the tune of the Pied Piper continues to echo through our culture. Whether it is a distorted memory of a plague, a misguided crusade, or a mass migration, the story's power lies in its profound ambiguity. We are left with a void, a space filled with grief and unanswered questions. This lack of a clear resolution is precisely what makes the tale so fascinating. It refuses to be a simple cautionary fable and instead insists on being a historical puzzle, inviting each new generation to try and solve the mystery of what truly happened on that summer day in 1284. The story's endurance also speaks to a number of deep-seated, universal fears. It taps into the parental fear of losing a child, the societal fear of the outsider who brings chaos, and the moral fear of the consequences of our own actions. The citizens of Hamelin are not depicted as evil, but as flawed and short-sighted. Their greed and arrogance lead directly to an unbearable punishment. This serves as a powerful lesson about social responsibility and the importance of honoring our commitments not just to others, but especially to those who hold power over our well-being. The Piper is a reminder that some debts must be paid one way or another. Today, the story of the Pied Piper has been adapted and reinterpreted countless times in literature, music, and film. Each version emphasizes different aspects of the legend. Some focus on the horror, others on the tragedy, and some even portray the Piper as a sympathetic figure, a champion of the oppressed. This adaptability is a key to its longevity. It functions like a myth, a narrative framework that can be filled with the anxieties and concerns of any era. It warns us about charismatic demagogues, the dangers of collective hysteria, and the exploitation of the innocent, themes that remain startlingly relevant in our modern world. Ultimately, the Pied Piper of Hamelin is more than just a creepy mystery. It is a testament to the power of storytelling to preserve memory, even when the precise facts have been lost to time. The tale holds a mirror up to our own world, asking us to consider the promises we make and the children we are responsible for. It reminds us that the consequences of a community's moral failures can be devastating and permanent. The children of Hamelin may be gone, but their story remains, a haunting and timeless melody that warns us to listen closely to the music, for not all tunes are meant to be followed.